Welcome to the Connected Enterprise podcast. This is Carl Lewis, your host from Vision 33. And my guest today is Dan Straw. Dan's headquartered in the UK and is the director of our Human Capital Management division. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be with you today.
Been trying to get you here for several months, but you've been a busy guy. So glad to have you finally. Tell us just a little bit about the HR situation in the UK and what you hear about the US from a recruitment standpoint. How are things going in those countries?
It's a great question, Carl, and I think there's a lot of similarities in the US and the UK and in most territories today. And the biggest challenge organizations, I think, are facing is twofold. One, how do they identify, retain their top talent, their employees, the people who are in the business today adding value? There's a huge competitive landscape out there, competitors offering many different benefits to try and entice people away. So, how do you put the right structures in place to retain those people? And the opposite side of that is where you do have skill gaps. How are you recruiting the right people into the organization as quickly as possible, but also at the least cost, I guess, in terms of bringing those people in? We hear of organizations using agencies and the fees that they have to pay to bring those people in. So how do we try and help people from a technology perspective? And that's something I'm very, very passionate about, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, for sure. How did you get to where you are in terms of being, I'll call you a specialist for lack of a better word, in this HR sector?
It's a great question. I actually started as a trainer, an operational trainer in an insurance company. So I was teaching people the really interesting conversation of insurance policy. I actually quite enjoyed that, but it happened to give me an opportunity to deploy a learning management platform within our organization. And I found being able to take my understanding of the training process as it was and the whole training function, but marry that into a system was something that I really enjoyed, bringing the two together and then seeing the impact on the organization of deploying that technology. So I decided to move into a partner role where I was helping organizations deploy technology and get the value from it. And then through that, I've ended up ultimately in the seat today and heading up a team that work with customers to absolutely solve those challenges. So I bring with me that inherent HR understanding, but also that passion around how technology can enable people to be successful.
It's interesting. A lot of people don't think about the fact that HR, there's actually a lot of training involved from onboarding people, even negative side to how you dismiss somebody properly, right? There's an awful lot of process that goes on in the HR department. Dan, what do you think are some of the bigger issues facing companies that typically drive them to select HR software to help them?
It can vary by organization, of course, but some of the key trends that I typically see comes back to efficiency, having automation and technology to remove manual effort. Talk to so many customers where they've got two or three people whose job it is to maintain spreadsheets of data. And that inherently comes with challenges, right? Because spreadsheets are only as up to date as the last update that was put in. You hear the horror stories of corrupt Excel files. I'm sure we've all experienced that in the
Yeah.
past. Efficiency savings, absolutely important. But that goes hand in hand for me in terms of having access to data. In most organizations, people are their greatest asset, but we've got this big asset and we don't understand them. We don't understand our headcount. We don't understand the skills and capabilities that we have. And therefore, to make strategic decision making as a leader in a business can be very difficult. And then you give technology that can bring that information together, but not only give you the data, help you analyze it, understand it, and then make the appropriate business decisions. That's one of the big drivers that I often see. And I think the third thing I'd say is the employee experience. As an organization, we talk about our people being our greatest asset, but how do we engage them in the organization right from the moment they find us on a career site? That's the first impression that somebody gets of our organization. So, are we really showing our culture and what we're like as an organization? But then taking that through that recruitment process, how we onboard them, how they interact with HR and the organization on a day-to-day basis. And that, if we get that right and we get engaged employees, guess what? They add more to the organization, they're more productive, they stay longer, and they become our future leaders.
I think sometimes people they don't understand some of the benefits from a system that's designed to really assist us with our whole HR, human capital management program, from the onboarding through the entire life of an employee and how it can help us keep them. What are some of these benefits that people don't often think about from this type of software experience?
There are many, but if I was to summarize them, there's some less attractive benefits. If I think about compliance, when we're dealing with people and data, there's huge compliance responsibilities that an organization have to ensure that they're capturing the right data, reporting the right data, but also handling that data in the right way. And often it is sensitive data. So there's a huge compliance saving by getting that right and not being subject to any fines or penalties if you're found to be not doing that in the right way. The other big benefit that I typically see is a reduction in overall cost because technology inherently brings automation, which allows us to save cost within the organization. Linking again to that employee experience perspective, we've got more engaged employees. They're typically performing higher, so the organization ultimately does better because everybody's working towards the same thing. We don't have those pockets of employees sort of just working for their manager and maybe not connected into the wider organizational strategy.
You talked about the employee experience. The podcast has always had this focus on what companies do to stay connected to their vendors, their customers, and their employees. The last one has always been the most difficult to talk about because it's like, what are we really doing to keep everybody connected? How does HR software really help the employee in their experience with the company?
This starts right from their onboarding experience. So typically they've been through a recruitment process. The organization has worked really hard ultimately to convince that individual to come and work for them. We've accepted the offer, and I work with many hiring managers, almost a sigh of relief. Phew, I filled that vacancy. But then things go quiet for 6, 8 weeks while that person's serving their notice. But actually, technology can give you a digital engagement platform that allows that employee to start to provide you with their information that they need to get set up, review the policies, procedures, get to know a bit about the people that they're going to be working with. So there's an immediate engagement with the organization. And I think that really takes away some of that anxiety that people would naturally start to build. Oh, I'm going to a new place. What's it going to be like? What's going to happen on my first day? Who am I going to be working with? So that engagement really starts from day one. If we're then in the organization, I think about I've got some performance objectives or goals that I'm working to. I can see potentially how they align to what my manager is trying to achieve and how that aligns to the strategy of the organization. So I immediately know what I'm doing and how that contributes to the success of the organization. And I always say, everybody typically wants to come to work and do a good job, but do we give them the space and the information they need to do that? And I think connecting them into the organizational strategy, really important. Second to that, how do I drive my career in the organization? And technology can help me do that, understanding my development path, what roles exist in the organization, even what other opportunities might exist in any organization. You kind of know the area you work in, and you might know that very well, but how do you know what's happening outside of your area? And seeing the opportunities that are available, being able to connect with the people that are managing those opportunities and having those real conversations about, I want to move into this area. How can I help that? Really helps with that internal mobility. So I think on a number of levels, different parts of what we call the HR process have got an opportunity to keep that employee engaged and ultimately bring them whole self to work and deliver the best that they can.
In today's world with the people working remotely and sometimes in the office and sometimes not, maybe they're completely remote at this stage. The HR software packages that we represent, do they help with that situation or try to bridge that gap?
They do, absolutely. Things as simple as when I'm requesting absence. I remember sat in an office, you'd ask all your colleagues, is anybody off on this day? Okay, I'm going to request it. The software can give me that information. I'm trying to request a day. I can see that some of my colleagues are out. Actually, maybe I want to choose a different day. Really, really basic example. But also, it's that face of the company, isn't it? I'm used to interacting with the HR software. So, whether I'm updating my goals, whether I'm thinking about the development and training that might be available within the organization, if I haven't got a colleague or somebody right next to me that I can talk that through, the technology makes it easy for me to go and look for that information and think about how that might apply to me. We saw, as most software vendors did, a huge increase in people moving to HR software through the pandemic because they immediately went from having people in an office and potentially paper processes, whiteboards with vacation on it and annual leave.
Yeah.
We need a solution. How do we keep on top of this? So moving to technology was a great way to help with that. But then they've kept it because they've seen the value that it's added to their organization. Nobody has gone, oh, we don't need that anymore. We're back in the office. And actually, they've adapted their working models because they've now got the tools that allow that remote or hybrid working.
My own experience shown me that investing in this sort of HR help is not something that companies do proactively very well. It's like there needs to be an event like the pandemic to kind of push
Mhm.
and to show them the need. Normally, those processes, they're just chugging along, doing their thing. But then if the workload becomes heavier, it's all of a sudden you realize what you're spending, what you're investing, and being more proactive makes a lot of sense. This is a great opportunity, it seems to me, for a lot of companies to get on board with that concept before the next impending event occurs that forces them down that road.
Absolutely. And if we think about most businesses and where they invest, if I think about a manufacturing business, they would typically have the best production machinery and tools that is invested in and maintained because they recognize it's critical to their business. If they can't deliver a quality product efficiently, they lose their competitive advantage. But you're absolutely right. When they look at their people, they don't apply that same lens and say, actually, how do we get the most and best out of these people? And how do we make sure that they continually want to stay with our organization? You're absolutely right. And it's a shame that there is often that compelling event. We've just had a compliance fine because we weren't managing data correctly, or we're suddenly losing all of our great people because we're not engaging them. But it is that opportunity. And I think there's also a bit of a misconception that it's a glorified spreadsheet. It's about managing data. But HR technology, it certainly was like that many years ago. But now, like any business platform, it's got so much technology. We're seeing AI come in, machine learning, that is enabling customers to move away from that administration of people data and actually leveraging the technology to identify trends and patterns and really partner with the business to drive the strategy forward. For me, that's really, really important. HR are here to be the business enabler, to allow the people to deliver the business strategy. And if we don't have the right investment, we're going to be that broken production line that we're just getting the same poor quality outcome that we potentially don't want, but we don't know how to fix it.
Tell us a little bit about the HR offerings that Vision 33 has today.
We've got two offerings, as you can see in my background here. One of them is SAP SuccessFactors, so part of the SAP portfolio of products, a very robust platform. A bit of a misconception that it's only for big business. That's absolutely not the case. It can work very well for the small and medium organizations. And I would say that it's got depth of functionality in each of the HR process areas. So it's got deep LMS capability, deep recruiting capability. So for any organizations that are doing lots of recruitment on an ongoing basis, maybe you've got quite a lot of turnover of employees, great functionality to automate that recruitment and help our recruiters focus on what matters, which is those great candidates. So SuccessFactors, a very functionally rich platform, although it is modular. I'll make that point that you don't have to take the whole platform. You can take a module which aligns to each part of the HR lifecycle. Bamboo HR, on the other hand, is an absolute end-to-end platform, functionality around recruitment, onboarding, core HR, performance, training management, and time tracking. But that is very much off-the-shelf SaaS product, as most of our listeners will be used to. So it's very little implementation effort. It runs off the shelf, some settings that customers can elect for. It's great for an organization that doesn't have particularly complex people requirements, but they need some technology to help managing people data, automated onboarding, and time off management. So we cover both aspects, but there is not a one rule sort of selection here. It's about what are your requirements, what do you need the platform to do, and therefore we recommend what we think is the appropriate based on that.
Are they both cloud based?
Absolutely, yes. Both cloud-based, full software as a service, all your maintenance, upgrades, all baked into the subscription cost.
Sounds like it would be a much better solution than trying to deploy any solution on site for sure.
Absolutely. And by virtue, Carl, that means the time to implement is very quick. I mean, Bamboo, we can have that up and running in 4 weeks. People don't believe me when I say that, but I proved it. I've got many customers that will attest to it. But 4 weeks to get a cloud solution off the ground is very normal for us. Success factors can take a little bit longer, but we're talking a couple of months. We're not talking sort of 6, 12 month deployments. They are very quick with them being cloud. I think reassurance for our HR and business colleagues out there, security is all handled by the provider at the industry levels, data handling all handled to the global standards that are needed. So a lot of that ongoing challenge and risk that our organizations might be facing is taken as part of the subscription. You can then focus on looking after your people and delivering the business strategy.
These days, people are doing everything they can to kind of connect all of their systems. Are we planning, working on, maybe it's still a dream for all I know, to connecting these solutions to our ERP solutions?
Absolutely. So we've got connectors for Bamboo for all of the ERP solutions that we offer. We've also got connections from SuccessFactors into Business by Design as well, working on a few others as well for our broader ERP stack there as well. And that's all built on Saltbox, our platform, and those connectors are pre-built, so they just need to be enabled, fields mapped, and they're good to go.
Wonderful. And I wasn't sure about what kind of progress we'd made on that front, so that's great to hear. The deployment is pretty quick, as you mentioned, but if someone's interested, are there steps they can take to prepare for an HR implementation to make it go smoothly?
Absolutely. The biggest drain on time in any implementation is data, and that's not just exclusive to HR. We see that in many system deployments. So depending on the source of that data and how accurate and up to date it is, can be quite time consuming. But again, I'm talking weeks here, not necessarily months. But also the second thing is being clear about the business requirements. So we understand that different industries have different requirements around people, and it's just making sure that we're clear what those requirements are. We can bring in our experience for different industries that we've worked with, but ultimately we need the client to be clear, okay, I need to capture X, Y, and Z information as that's reportable to my regulator. And so long as we're clear that we've got the data and we know what data, then that can speed the process. I think the other thing that it's worth mentioning is that more often than not, when we move to a solution like Bamboo or SuccessFactors, we're using it as an opportunity to transform. So we don't necessarily want to do what we've always done, because
Right.
without the technology, we had to work in a certain way. So we find that the processes end up being transformed, ways of working end up being transformed because the technology is often taking away a lot of the manual effort we had before.
Vision 33 works with a lot of small organizations. We have some big ones, but generally speaking, probably lean towards the small and medium enterprises. Many of them, I've met probably 400 customers and been on site at 400 of our customers over the 15 years that I've been with Vision 33. They may not even have an HR department. It's almost like the recruitment is done department by department, or maybe the president or CEO is actually the owner of the company and they're doing all the recruitment personally. If they make the decision, maybe we should stop doing that and are going to hire an HR professional. Is that a good time to put in place? And this is what we're going to use as software to change our company culture when it comes to recruitment and all of the rest of it.
It would, and my experience when you're interviewing that HR person, they're likely that's what that's be one of those questions that they ask. What platform do you use to manage HR? Because HR professionals really see the benefit of having technology. And I make the point, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I've not met one person who works in HR who went into HR to work with spreadsheets, but unfortunately, that's how they found their job. 80% of it is maintaining data or providing data to other areas. And when we start to work with them and deploy the technology, and they start to realize it's not a case that they go, oh, I've got all this free time now, I can sit back and have a cup of coffee, but they can actually do what they got into HR to do, which was to partner with the business, to work with people, and ultimately drive the business forward. But yes, back to your original question, it would be a great time as you're starting to bring in that HR resource is to think about the platform that you're going to use to drive that into the organization.
We've got a lot of customers out there that'll listen to this podcast. If they want to know more, what's the best way for them to engage with us and learn more about the offerings we have for HR?
First and foremost, it'd be through their assigned CRM. Get in touch with them, let them know they want to have a conversation about HR solutions. They can come through me and my team and we can set that up. We've got lots of information on our website, which would be a great place to go, or people can reach out to me directly. We can provide my contact details. So, however they wish to get in touch. The great thing is here at Vision, everybody knows about my area. So, as soon as they mention HR, I'm sure they'll ping me a message to say, we need to get you on a call to talk to this customer.
Yeah, like I said, between now and the next impending event, this is a good time.
Absolutely.
Once that event happens, then there'll be a crowd.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so
Absolutely, Carl.
get ahead of the game. Well, Dan, this has been great information. Wanted to have you here with us for months. It's been nice to meet you finally, person to person, and to share some of these thoughts with our audience. So, thanks again for being here.
No problem. It's been great. As I said at the start, very passionate about this subject. So I could talk to it for many days and many hours if you gave me the opportunity.
That'll make it just all that much better for people to engage with you. So, it'll be good. And being able to talk the same language as an HR professional is a big deal and make them comfortable for sure. Well, until next time, everybody, stay connected.